Welcome to In Her Voice, a podcast created for women who listen to and live by their deepest wisdom, their inner voice. This was made for you, the woman who feels pulled to more, to lead, to create, to dream, and to be a world changer. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am an inner voice coach. Join me here each week as we explore what it means to reach for your inspired potential, all while honoring your worthiness each and every day. Hello, this is Kelly, and you are listening to In Her Voice. Thank you so much for being here. Does anyone else feel like it's been a January already? That's how I feel, and I just want to share that because sometimes it's good to know that it's not just you. It's you're not alone in this journey. Sometimes life is challenging, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. I think I just needed to say that for myself. So I hope that it helps you too. Just remember, if life isn't perfect, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Okay, that's the end of the podcast today. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Todd, and we are talking about how to love more, live more, and make more as a woman. Right? Okay, sign me up. Yes, that is what I want. And I'm guessing that that is what all of us want. And so we're really going to dig in. Dawn gives us some really practical tools and ways to talk about feminine energy that I think are really interesting. So I think that you're going to love this interview. Let me tell you a little bit about Dawn. Todd is a 5-time author, grandmother, and the founder of Wildly Successful Women, a networking organization of over 10,000 members. With over 25 years as an energy medicine teacher and practitioner, and 15 years as an author, speaker, and executive business consultant, Dawn brings a deep understanding of sacred feminine energy, sensual manifesting, prosperity consciousness, and intention alongside grounded business practices. So basically, we have a side of woo with some really strong practical things, which is, as you know, probably my favorite combination. So let's get right to how to live more, love more, and make more with Todd. Todd, welcome to In Her Voice. I'm so excited to have you here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been really looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise. Well, we have a really fun and exciting topic, and it's this idea of loving more, living more, and making more.
Yes.
And when I read that, I was like, sign me up. There's nothing about that I don't want. And so I feel like it's so succinct and so it makes me feel all of these feelings when I hear those words put together. And so let's start with that. Why those 3 things? What is it about those 3 things that have pulled you in enough to be passionate enough to create a business around that?
Oh my gosh, that might be a long answer.
We've got time.
We've got all
time.
the time in the world, baby.
That's right.
Oh, a long time ago, I was a massage therapist, body worker, and most of my folks had either a head injury or post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I worked with a lot of people who'd had accidents and injuries. And through some changes in the laws in the state that I live in, our ability to bill insurance companies for those services evaporated. And we ended up losing many thousands of dollars kind of overnight. We had 4 therapists who worked for us, and my husband was my front office guy, and I was the primary breadwinner pretty much. Together, my husband and I have 7 children, 7 daughters.
Wow. 7 daughters.
7 daughters, baby.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'd been doing body work probably 15 years at that point, around in there. And I kind of wanted to step into coaching, so I've been training as a coach. And what I realized was that I built that business super intentionally, like very focused on certain principles that really drove the revenues in that business. And it was not like more marketing and more boots on the street. It was really in this, now I'll call it a feminine way. Then that those words, we didn't use those words. But what ended up happening is the business kind of collapsed. My husband had to get a job for working for somebody else, and I rebuilt that business as a cash practice, but it never really, you just can't make as much money when you don't have folks working for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go into coaching, and I thought it's going to be really around this idea of how we can use feminine intention energy. It really drives the numbers in a business, and people were just not getting it. And what I realized, I had to, out of that, I sort of developed what I'll call a body-centered business development system, and it's very geared towards women. And the idea is that what's happening in our body is also happening in our business. And so there's certain ways in which our energy moves that can impact how we're doing business, the decisions we're making. And it really comes down to understanding that women create best out of the power of our pleasure. And that when we're really focused on feeling good, saying yes to ourselves, even in the face of other people's opinions, that there's nothing more powerful than that. Yeah.
I love it.
Does that sound?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean there's so much here to dive into. I want to start with, you said the words feminine intention.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big part of what you teach and what you help other women discover or uncover, maybe I should say, because we all have it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what do you mean by feminine intention? What is that?
Well, what I'll say is that it's not you, any human can use this. You do not have to be a woman or to have women be biologically a woman.
Okay.
It's really about this intention, and the source of our energy. So, in Taoism and in Celtic traditions, both of them have what they call the Three Cauldrons. Right? Have you heard of those?
I don't think so.
Okay,
This seems unfamiliar to me.
okay. In Taoism, they're the three centers of energy, and so which I later found out. I didn't kind of put that together when I sort of downloaded this system, but the the place in our body, like right behind our belly button, is the place where we hold all of our life force energy. And in my world, that energy center, it's like uh, a bubble, or if you had a snowman and there were three snowballs, it's the lower snowball.
Uh-huh.
And that lower snowball holds all of our life force energy, both what we're born with and what we acquire. And one of the ways that women acquire more life force energy is through the practice of pleasure, either sensuality, sexuality, and also in that part of the body, it's reproductive. And because when a soul buckles down into the body, it buckles into the perineum. I also consider that our soul calling, the deepest truth of who we are, will be felt in the yoni. And so, with that in mind, understanding that um, intention, how we use our intention, has everything to do with how much available energy we have to put towards it, right? So it's sort of like things come into reality through the connection between magnetics and electrical energy. And The magnetics is in our body, and the electrical energy is also in our body. So it made sense to me that if we're going to really cultivate and be more intentional, that we're going to cultivate our own personal energy. That was a long answer.
No, I like it. I love the word cultivate, by the way. And right before you said that, I take notes when I'm interviewing, and I wrote down, how do we build or create energy? Because you said we have we're born with a certain amount of energy, but also we can accumulate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that, to me, that's the burning question, right? How, tell me how. Tell me how I can build that. Tell me how I can stoke the fire.
Stoke the fire. That's another great way of saying it. Well, I think for women, and we're gonna stay on the girl train here for a second, because one of the great and easy ways to do that for women is to consciously cultivate our sexual energy. And that can be done in a lot of ways. There's and a lot of reasons why women sometimes just turn that off.
I know a lot of women
Mm-hmm.
who I don't know if it has been a conscious decision. I don't think it is. I don't think, the women that I know, that it's a conscious decision to turn that off, but that their sexual energy and enjoyment has turned off for them.
Yeah, if you were to think about that three snowball picture that I was talking about, and how, the lower snowball is sexual, sensual energy. It's our legacy. It's our soul calling, our product. If you're creating your own product or offering, it's deeply connected to that part of your body. The middle power center, the middle snowball is all about speaking your truth, asking for what you want, the sales process, like asking for the sale, and the upper one is about marketing, taking your vision into the world. And so many business conversations, and I'll say just life conversations, start from the top down. They were thinking about what's next and what our strategy is, and what the next big action is we need to take. And it's sort of as a descending flow of energy, right? And a different way of looking at it is like, how do we cultivate that lower energy?
Right.
And so
go
the
from
point
the
of
bottom up.
right, the bottom up. And so like you said, some women who are people that maybe just they're just not in touch with that sexual energy. And when you look at them in your mind's eye, like, they're amazing humans. They're so spiritually connected. They give you the shirt off their back, but they always just kind of struggle with money and abundance. And if you kind of look at their energy field in your mind's eye, you might notice that there's a lot going on above the waist and not so much below the waist. Right? It's kind of like those upper two snowballs they're missing a snowball.
Right. Well, and
go ahead.
When I think about women and sexuality, I mean, and I will just use myself as an example. I'm not going to put this on anyone else, but I think that there is a generalization here that is true. And that is, we're taught a lot of things about what it means to be sexual and about the consequences of that. And, there's specific names women are given when they, dive into their pleasure too freely, shall I say, right? Like, we haven't been, this is the story that you're telling is not the story that we've been told.
That would be true. And each of those power centers have their own shadow, and they are the shadow of the whore, the bitch, and the witch. And those are three things we will go to great lengths to not be one of those things.
Right. No one wants to be those things.
No one wants to be those things. Yet, embracing the shadow of that allows you to fully open into the full expression of it.
Yes.
And where this question started was, how do you cultivate that energy, right? So it's
Right.
not always about more sex. I will say it's about more sensuality,
Mm.
doing more things that feel really good for you. One of the things that, I mean, it might be just an intention to just have some kind of pleasure every single day. It might be a deeper practice with a jade egg, or um, would your audience, you all know what those are?
Why don't you tell? I know what it is, but why don't you share? Because I think that these are important conversations. And I think sometimes in these conversations, people feel embarrassed when they don't know what things are. And I don't
Right.
want people to feel that way.
Oh, yeah. Jade eggs are made out of jade, usually, a really dark green jade, which is very, very dense, and they're in the shape of an egg, and they're used internally in the yoni, and they've been used for thousands of years, and they will tonify the vaginal walls. They help with libido. They help with lubrication. Um, Jade is a mineral that the um, ancients considered that it absorbed our good energy and then would feed it back to us when we were
Mm,
on low on energy. And so because we're using it internally as a woman, we're right in that, right in the neighborhood there of where we hold all of our chi anyway.
mm-hmm.
So it can be a really lovely way to build more life force energy, in addition to just deciding that you want to have fun, and it's okay no matter what anyone else says.
Yes. That, that right there. It's okay. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to enjoy yourself. It's okay to find pleasure and to seek pleasure in things. And, really, like when you think about some messaging like no pain, no gain, right? That there is no pleasure in that,
No,
right?
no.
Or even think about a diet. Like a diet is about restricting, it's
Mm-hmm.
about taking things away, it's about withholding. And there's, no pleasure in that. And so many things that I feel like as women, we're taught like that it's almost like a rite of passage, right? Like this
Right.
idea that we must withhold, restrict, um, feel pain in order to, I don't know, to gain, right? That I just don't believe that anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of myth around that, a lot in the um, a lot archetypically, I think, that affects women.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had, if you believe in multiple lifetimes, we've had multi lifetimes of times where all people were restricted for thinking for themselves and not encouraged to tap into their own source of intuition. And, like you needed someone else to help you access God. That was the whole idea with Martin Luther, and Protestantism, right?
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm.
protesting that you have to have a priest to talk to God.
Mm-hmm. That is not available to you.
It's not available to you because
Mm-hmm.
you're not special enough, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so let's talk about the practice of pleasure
Mm,
because I think that there are probably a lot of people, maybe people listening to this podcast right now, who don't even know where to start when it comes to that.
mm.
Like, what are some simple ways we can seek out pleasure, like you say, on a daily basis so we are stoking that feminine energy?
Well, I would say the first thing is to find something that you can do, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes, that just makes you happy for no good reason. It it might be an adult coloring book. It might be stepping outside and watching your dog play in the yard. It might be, going for a bike ride, whatever it is. this is a habit. We've gotten into the habit of just desensitizing ourselves and just moving forward through life without ever really feeling it. And somehow that's okay. So in order to shift that, you have to start with the most obvious and sort of ridiculous things that help you remember, oh yeah, that does feel good, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to do more of that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And that is so simple, like you said. And I think what might be helpful for people who are going to start putting a practice like this into place. And by the way, for those of you who are listening who know about the Enoughness Planner, that is a book that I wrote to help people cultivate their enoughness, feeling good, feeling good enough every single day, right? This practice of pleasure could be considered what I call a kinder habit. And a kinder habit is just something that is rooted in your desires that help you feel the way you want to feel. So 5 to 10 minutes of pleasure, that is such a kind habit to create in your life. And it may be helpful to make a list of those things, because in the moment, you might not be able to think of it, right? Especially if you're out of practice of that.
I love that idea too. I have a list on my phone of places I want to visit and movies I want to see, because I'm always, you probably do that too. Like, oh my gosh, I'd love to see that movie. And then you try
And
to
then
pick a
forget
movie.
about it.
Can't remember it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's a great idea, to just have a list of things that you could choose from that are supportive and healthy for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you are trying to shed a few pounds, so it's not going to be eat chocolate, but it's going to be go for a walk in a way that feels really good.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm curious, Dawn, what would be a few of the things on your list?
I know you were going to ask me that. And I was kind of laughing yesterday because I knew, of course, this interview is coming up, so it's really been kind of on my heart and my mind. And so I was just noticing, like, all how much fun I had yesterday. I went paddleboarding at sunrise on a lake. It's
Mm.
pretty close to my house, and I did some yoga in the backyard. Um, did some lawn work. Worked on the computer for a couple hours. Um, drug my husband out to listen to a band, and actually got him to dance. You know,
Mm.
for like an hour. Uh, he's not a big dancer. But, it's always tempting to say, oh, I know he doesn't like that. I'm not going to make him do it. In the past, I would have been like trying to take care of him because I knew he doesn't really like it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm more like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'd love it if you joined me. And
Mm.
let's do this together. But if you don't want to, there's no expectation, because this does not say anything about our relationship. It doesn't, um, it's not about you. This is all for me. So you're free to do whatever you'd like to with it.
Well, and what I love about what you're saying is, so you were talking about that, the the big the big part, the bottom part of the snowman is the
Mm-hmm.
sexual, sensual energy, finding pleasure, seeking pleasure, creating a practice of that. And then so you did that throughout your day, like with all of these different things that you were doing. And then you tapped into that middle part, which you said was asking for what you want.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like that's such a beautiful real life example of when you stoke the fire that empowers you then to understand why your desires are important and why they matter and why you can speak up and ask for what you need.
Right. Yeah, I love how you put that together. I hadn't really thought of that, but I love that. Thank you for that reflection.
Well, it's and it's I just love it. And I'm just thinking about, the things that you said that you were doing that would be on your list, yoga and paddle boarding. These are things that in different contexts could not bring pleasure.
Right. So that may, yeah, like for
Yeah.
some people that would be like, oh, please don't make me,
Right. That, and I think even there's the sense of like, if I'm not doing something that's quote unquote productive, then it doesn't count.
Right.
I see this all the time. It drives me batty, like, well, like it doesn't count. And I just think like, what if we stopped trying to count everything and just really, and this is where listening to your inner voice comes in, right? You can tap into your inner voice and you can ask, what do I need today to feel pleasure, to light my fire, to feel excited about living? And from that flows all of the rest of the things you're talking about, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Listening to that voice and letting it direct you to the next right thing for you.
I love it. Well, so I love also that you talk about this, not just in the context of pleasure and life and living, but also in the context of business. Because I think that is not a jump that most people would make.
I've heard that. I think I'm
Yeah.
a little weird in that.
I love it though, because to me, like, I feel like then it's giving me control. It's giving me the power in my life to create something in my business that also feels good in my body and feels good in my life. So how do we start to connect the dots? What does it look like to take this feminine energy and feed our business off of that?
Oh, that's such a great question too. What I think that looks like, and it really starts. So I'm going to just speak to mostly to entrepreneurs, but for people who maybe not an entrepreneur, um, but wanting to still have control or input into the direction that their work is going, is dropping way down into your belly and feeling all the parts you're kind of sitting on, and noticing how that feels, like just getting a snapshot of where you're at and thinking about all of the things that make you money. What is it that you really sell? And if you don't have a deep sense of like, oh yeah, like it just drops in and it's so solid and it feels so good, you might want to rethink that. Because the voice of the soul, it speaks through the yoni because the soul's fully embodied there.
So it's almost like filtering your decision-making process
Right.
through that place.
Right. And there's really three centers of intelligence in the body. Of course, the head and the brain is one, and the heart has its own kind of intelligence, and the womb has its own kind of intelligence. And I think we've forgotten the womb connection and what big intelligence is there. So when we start listening to that, it allows us to experience the field around us in a completely different way. And all of that helps us understand, is the business that I'm in super aligned with me? Because if there's any wiggle room, or you don't love it, or you have a question about the ethics or the product or the guy you work for, it's really hard to manifest what you want because you're just not aligned with it.
And, I think that being out of alignment in that regard is the root of much dissatisfaction. When people look around and they think, I thought my life was going to be different. I thought I was going to feel different. I thought there was more for me, but I guess this is just it. Like, I don't think we have to settle for that. I don't think it's required for us to settle. I really believe that we can find, like you say, it's an intention of living the way we were born to live. And I think that's our right. And I do want to acknowledge that it's a privilege. Like, I feel as a white woman, that's a privilege that I am able to lean into deeply, and that while it's a right for everyone, that not everyone has the privilege to be able to do that. But I think that if I'm not taking advantage of that privilege, then I'm not able to help anyone else in that regard either.
And I think that when you set the example for that, that there's ways to carve out some pleasure for yourself, even if it seems like it's just a drop in the bucket, you know. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And a pleasure, it can be simple, and it doesn't have to cost money, and it doesn't have to even take you out of your house. You know, like, there's a lot there for us to use that that we can, if we see it in that way.
yeah, I love that too. You're so right, especially after the last year we've had, right? You do not have to leave your house, even though you might want to.
Well, I was on your website, and something really stuck out to me, and I want to read it. And then I want you to talk to us about that, because it's sort of shocking. You say, if it doesn't bring you income, inspiration, or orgasms, it doesn't belong in your life.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, I can be on board with that. So, but like, how do we get there? Like, how do you let go of the things that aren't bringing you that? How do you bring in those things that will bring you that? I mean, what's the process?
The process is learning how to cultivate and own all of your own sensual power. I will say this really is the sexualness of this process, I think, is important, because something happens for a woman when she is given full permission, when her yoni is given full permission to decide who's coming and who's going. You know, it's sort of like it can be like a revolving door. It's a speculum, a baby, a man, or whatever it is, right? Like, when you get full permission to own that part of your body, it sort of has this ripple effect throughout the rest of your life and your business. That's why I'm such a big fan of Jade Eggs, because I think they really help women dive into that.
Well, and I love that. And let's be clear, the person that you get permission from to own that is yourself.
Exactly. Right. We're having a conversation with our body and saying, is this something you want? Like, okay, you're going to be my intuitive guide now, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this something that you want? Does this feel good? Will it nourish my my nervous system? I think there's many spiritual traditions that have been around a long time that try to constrict our pleasure and desire. The idea is,
yeah, I
right,
believe that.
kind of like desires. If you don't desire anything, then you can't be disappointed. Or if you desires are of the ego, so we're gonna not pay any attention to our desire.
Well, and you know what makes me wonder, Dawn, is like, on a deeper level, if we're talking about a patriarchal society, it's almost like those patriarchs, if you will, knew that if women tap into that power, they better watch out.
I think there's so much truth to that.
I just got goosebumps, like, thinking about that.
Yeah, I think it's no accident that when one country or culture would invade another country, one of the first things they do is rape the women. Why is that? Well, is it just about babies, or is it about dismantling the source of power of
And
that
claiming,
culture?
right?
And claiming it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and so the beauty of that is in the 21st century, in the United States where we live, and in not all of the countries around the world, but many of the countries around the world, women do have that power in their own hands.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think of how important it is to acknowledge that and to be proud of that and to protect it.
Right. To not take it for granted.
Right.
And so the thing that always sort of strikes me about the practice of pleasure and listening to desire is that many, like I said, many ancient traditions sort of frown on that, but they really were designed for men. For a guy, they do need to kind of rein it in, tamp down their desires, learn how to master themselves. Their physiology can require that kind of constriction as a way to harness the forces within.
Mm-hmm.
Women, I think, we don't need any more constricting. We need a way to feel that flow and step into it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the practice is just completely different, you know, in spirituality and in business and in making money, because things just energy moves differently in our
Mm-hmm.
body.
So if it's not bringing you income, inspiration, or orgasms, get rid of it. How do you get rid of it?
Well, I think you have to decide um, where your priorities are, um, and take full responsibility for
Yes.
what you're manifesting.
Right. It's on you.
It's on you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, this is so good, Dawn. I love it. I love it because it's not just saying, okay, it's in your lap now. It's saying, take control, use this, lean into it, find the pleasure, let that fuel you, seek out the things that create inspiration, seek out the things that bring into your life what you want. And by doing that intentionally, as you say, you can grow like your experience of the world. You can grow your business. You can grow your income. You can grow your impact.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many things. And isn't it interesting? You were talking about the womb. That's where we grow babies. Like
right.
We grow human beings in the womb.
Yeah.
Why not other things?
Right. That is our place of fertility, where, so that's why I always say, if you're working on a project or a program or an offering or something and it doesn't turn you on, I mean, if it doesn't literally kind of give you a little party in your pants, you might want to rethink it, because it's going to be a pain in the ass.
We don't want that.
No.
And it could be a simple, like you said, like just a simple process of going inward to ask the question of your inner voice. To I like to think of situations like this as like a dressing room. Like when I'm making decisions, like I'm gonna take a few things into the dressing room with me and I'm gonna try them on. I'm gonna see how they feel.
Right.
And pay attention to how they feel, because that matters.
Mm-hmm.
If I end up buying a dress that doesn't feel good, but I think it's a great deal, it's going to hang in my closet, or I'm going to wear it. I'm going to hate it.
Right.
Like you said, it's going to be a pain in the ass. I'm going to wish I had never bought it.
Right. If you'll never use it. Right. So I think that paying attention to our inner voice is so important, in understanding that as we grow spiritually and become more embodied, that spiritual growth is not up and out of the body. It is down and into the body.
Like roots, rooted
That's
in.
how we grow, and taking responsibility for what we are creating is super important, because our our influence is felt by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, wow. So, Dawn, speaking of inner voice, I can't wait to know what your inner voice has been saying to you lately.
I have a funny story about this.
Okay.
So it's not profound, but it is. I thought it was just funny. So my husband and I have an Airbnb, and it we sleep a lot of people. We also live on the same property as the Airbnb, so I'm super careful about who I say yes to. And I had a guest who messaged me, and I instantly had a feeling like, no, I should not do this. And I thought about it, and I was like, there's nothing, there's nothing to indicate that. I talked to my husband about it. I asked her a few more questions, and I used my intellect to override my intuition, thinking it doesn't really. This is just my Airbnb. And this guest sadly turned out to be a really difficult guest. But what I really learned from this is they were here for a family reunion, and they wanted to have a party with 40 people on my property, which you can't do. Yeah, can't do that. But what I really felt was, if I would have just listened to my intuition, she would have found something that was better.
Yeah.
Right? And so in a way, I'm kind of responsible for their family reunion didn't go as planned. Why? Because I didn't listen to my intuition. And it was such a small thing. Like, it was just a flash. I happened to talk to my husband about it, and he's like, yeah, together we were like, okay, well, no big deal. Right. But it just made me laugh. And especially knowing I was going to have this conversation with you. So.
Well, and what I love about that is, and like that example of you weren't listening, right? Is that that's a beautiful thing, because now you can reflect on that and you can say, next time I'm going to listen. I think sometimes we feel like, oh, well, I failed. Like I didn't listen. Like I messed up. What was I thinking? Like we go into like beat yourself up mode, and it's just another opportunity to say, well, what an amazing inner voice I have.
Yeah, it was really fun to just kind of sit back and watch how this has unfolded. And sometimes it just creates such a great story too. Like you're a podcast host, so the value of a great story that illustrates a concept. So am I willing to look super silly and kind of embarrassed because I didn't listen to my inner voice? Absolutely. Because I think it's like makes such a great story,
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that. I think it's so valuable to hear about those failures too, because that's how we learn. Like you learn such an important thing about how wise your inner voice is in that moment. And that's something that we all need to learn over and over again, because we forget. And that's what practicing is all about. Well, Dawn, you say, if it doesn't bring you income, inspiration, or orgasms, get rid of it. I will say today, you have brought me personally great inspiration. I hope that everyone that's listening to this feels the same. I have just really enjoyed talking about this, and I appreciate you being here with us to share this today.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation, Kelly. Just really an honor to be chatting with you, and thank you so much. So I just really appreciate you.
You're welcome. One of the things I really love about what Dawn talks about is how we really need to give ourselves permission to choose the things that bring us joy, to give ourselves permission to decide what we want in our life, and what we don't want in our life. And it seems simple, yet it can be really challenging. And giving permission to yourself is a huge thing that I have been sitting with and sitting inside of and creating about. And if this is something that you really want to dig into more, I encourage you to check out my Give Yourself Permission journal. It's a little pocket-sized journal that literally just has permission slips in it for you. There's some pre-written ones. You sign your name, your date, you tear it out, you take it with you. It's an intention. It's you telling yourself, this is what I want. And it's okay to say that. And the act of doing that, the act of writing that permission slip for yourself, tearing it out, keeping it with you is so powerful. So if some of these things, this idea of even giving yourself permission of choosing the things that make you happy, if that's challenging to you, do something about it. Take some steps, do some practicing. You have to practice giving yourself permission. And so if you want to get yourself one of those, you can buy them right on Amazon. You can Prime ship it for free to your house in probably 2 days or less. And you can head on over to kellycovert.com/books, and there's a link to the Amazon page. Or if you're on Amazon, you can just search Kelly Covert author and it will come up. So I encourage you to get one of those, keep it with you, write those permission slips until giving yourself permission feels more natural and easier, because it will get easier. I promise you that. I want you to remember this. You are a powerful, amazing, beautiful, passionate woman. You were put on this earth at this very time for a reason. I strongly believe that. And when you honor yourself each and every day, that reason becomes more and more clear, and you are able to live into that more and more. Remember this, each and every single day, you are worthy.